Hello and welcome to my podcast. I'm Josh, and today we're questioning the Supreme Court's ruling on the contraception mandate, and why I don't think the First Amendment has anything to do with it at all. If you're not interested in this, make sure you check out my next topic on my next podcast. It's going to be about the abuses of Bob Jones University using sin to degrade women. I'm just waiting on an email or two so I can improve some sources and see if I can use some names or not. So, as almost all of you know, yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled that the contraception mandate is unconstitutional. Now, while I will say right off the bat, I don't agree with the ACA. I'm a bit libertarian in my leanings, but the court is flat out wrong. And I'll explain to you why they're wrong, or at least why I think they're wrong anyway. But first, I actually do want to give a bit of background on this of my own understanding. At first, I didn't like this. I was behind Hobby Lobby because, as I said, I have libertarian leanings, and I supported the idea that, yeah, you shouldn't be able to tell the business what they can do. However, I discovered with a bit more thinking that I was a dumbass on this issue. So, let's actually look into this. What does the First Amendment actually say about religion? Okay, so the First Amendment states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Obviously, this has nothing to do with the case. That we're not establishing a religion. Obviously. Now, the second part states, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And this is where you get people hanging their legal hats, so to speak. Now, let's go over what is prohibit. Prohibit is, I'm sure everyone listening to this knows, since I'm sure anyone listening to this is a decently intelligent individual, but let's go over it just for argument's sake. Prohibit is not allowing something to be done, banning something, preventing something. So, the government prohibits murder. It prohibits cheating on your taxes. It prohibits driving over the speed limit. You're not allowed to do these things. Now, can we argue that it prohibits anything? That's debatable. Now, can we argue that it prohibits the free exercise of religion? Now, I think this is where problems happen. I think that this is where the court got it wrong. And the reason I think they got it wrong is this. Where does it say anywhere in their own beliefs that they are not allowed to provide something that may do something that they disagree with? And the reason I say may is something I'll pick up in a minute or two. But what I do want to go over really quick is I know some people aren't going to like this fact, but Hobby Lobby doesn't prohibit all contraception. That's something you're not really hearing in the news media, but I will be fair. I'm going to be fair to Hobby Lobby, and I'm actually going to read something that they made a statement of. Let's see here. Okay. Now, the Green family who owns Hobby Lobby, that is, they provide 16 out of 20 of preventive contraceptions required in the mandate, and Hobby Lobby will continue its long-standing practices of covering these preventive contraception for their employees. However, the Green family cannot provide or pay for potentially life-threatening drugs and devices. These drugs include Plan B and Aaliyah, the so-called morning after pill and the week after pill. Covering these drugs and devices would violate their deeply held religious beliefs that life begins at the moment of conception. So before I go and pull this whole thing apart, let's actually look at why this is an issue for them. And I actually have an interesting take on this. In my personal opinion, I think that there are two camps that are a part of this. I think there's the no killing babies camp. Majority of the people you'd meet on the street if you were to talk to this issue who favor this ruling, they're like, well, there's no reason to kill babies. Might be some people like me who are like, well, I don't want the government doing anything like this. I don't want the government forcing anything. And I can understand that. They just might not understand why I disagree with that argument. But then you have these other people who I feel are using this issue to control. You hear a lot of people saying that we've lost the direction of this country. We're no longer a religious nation. We've turned away from God. Some of these nut jobs actually go to the extreme of saying that because we've turned away from God, all these bad things have happened to us. Everything from terrorist attacks to hurricanes to everything like that. So these people really want spotlight. And I think that that's why people like them are in on this issue. Because I believe some of them are actually intelligent enough to understand that these pills actually don't kill any babies. During the time these pills are taken, there are no babies. There is not even an embryo. There's not even the starting of an embryo when these pills are taken most of the time. Unless, of course, they believe in magic babies that happen the moment after sex, which, honestly, some of them might believe in magic babies. That, in fact, might be part of the problem, they believe in magic babies. But I highly doubt that that's a majority, crossing my fingers here. I believe they actually just want the religious foundations that they believe that the country was founded on to be put back in place. And I think that that's their big deal, because you hear about this, well, this is discrimination, and this is persecution, and this ruling helps us get our religious liberties back. This is another show, but I will go into this at another point, but to all those people who say this, your religious liberties are not under attack. Just don't use that argument, it makes you look stupid. And if you are one of those magic baby people who apparently did not take sex ed, or even learn about much of the science behind it, please go pick up a book or read something. There are no magic babies. I'm sorry to break it to you. Anyway, on to what these pills actually do. Now, how does Plan B work? This is right off their website about how it works. It may prevent or delay ovulation. It may interfere with the fertilization of an egg. Okay, so what this means in basic terms is that it prevents the egg from going down the tube and being in a place that actually allows the sperm to interact with the egg. This means that the sperm never meets the egg. There's no baby. There's no embryo. There was never a potential for a baby, embryo, whatever you want to call it. There's no potential. That is in fact how this pill works. There is no baby. Because there is no baby and no embryo, so they can't even argue that this is a problem because life begins at conception. There is no conception. Now, what they might be confusing, maybe their conception with copulation. Now, if they're saying that life begins at copulation, then would that mean that God has aborted a lot of babies? Because not all copulation leads to conception. So if they believe that, in fact, all copulation leads to conception, then their God has aborted a lot of babies. So in fact, they have nothing to say that there's a moral outcry about, since there's no killing of any babies. No matter when you say life begins, there's no ending of life. I mean, it's not like they're probably against all contraception, right? Right? Oh, yeah. That might be the case, actually. The reason I say that is because most people who are against this mandate actually don't understand that the Hobby Lobby case covers most birth controls, because when you hear them on the streets, or you talk to them, or they have their signs out, you hear them say stuff like, well, we don't need to pay for your birth control. Actually, Hobby Lobby does pay for their birth control. And amusingly enough, they actually pay for vasectomies, which is probably worse than birth control, actually. But still, the overall point stands. There's no prohibiting of the free exercise of religion here. And actually, the main reason that I have a problem with this is that it goes against the idea that everyone should be treated equally. If one company has to pay for something, and they're not religious, but then you have another company who gets to weasel out of it because they are religious, I think that's wrong. There's no basis for that. It's completely unfair. Why can't someone say they don't like the idea of this, even if they're not religious? It's just flat out not a fair standard. So if anyone actually asks you about this case and talks about the First Amendment, you can tell them that the First Amendment has nothing to do with this case at all. And then you can explain it to them. I actually did quite a bit of research on the pills and how all of this works just to go through this. Thank you for listening to my podcast, and remember, next time I'm having a special on Bob Jones University and the way they use sin to abuse people. My ending and opening theme is by Kevin MacLeod, and it's called Feeling Good, and it's part of the Creative Commons licensing. See you all soon, and remember, question everything.